It's amazing. Now, not everyone is that humble, sadly. And some people that should be a little more humble than they are because they don't have much to be proud of, instead want to have outward signs that they deserve to be prideful. They want all eyes on them. And that's exactly what we see in the very next story. This is the cursing of the fig tree. In the Matthew version, the next story we get is the cleansing of the temple. But in the Mark version, he switches it and starts with the fig tree and then goes into the temple. And we're going to stick with Mark's version here because I think there's something symbolic about recognizing the problem in the tree and then recognizing the problem in the temple. In Mark 11, verse 11, there's also a detail here that's absolutely essential. It says, "And Jesus entered into Jerusalem and into the temple. And when he had looked round about upon all things, and now the eventide was come, he went out unto Bethany with the 12. Now, why that verse is so important is the triumphal entry has been completed. The crowds perhaps have scattered somewhat. Jesus rides into town, but eventually makes his way all the way to the temple. And when he goes there, he looks round about upon all things, but doesn't do anything. He then goes back out of the Temple Mount, out of the city, on to Bethany, where he spends the night at Martha's place, and then comes back the next day. And it's that next day that he cleanses the temple. But what I love here is Jesus is not jumping to conclusions. He's not acting out of just heat of the moment, kind of emotional outburst. No, he's always in control. And he's a righteous judge. Before he cleanses the temple, he comes to check it all out. Before he prescribes, he diagnoses. And he gets a sense of what is going on in the temple. According to the John version, he had cleansed the temple 3 years ago at the beginning of his ministry. To Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the cleansing comes now at the end of the ministry. And most likely it happened both times. But what's interesting here is to precede it by a little tour to see just how bad have things gotten. And is it time for me to cleanse it all over again? Now, it's the next, so you've seen it, he comes back to Bethany, he spends the night. It's the next day now. So yesterday was Palm Sunday, now it's Monday of Holy Week. And let's go to Mark chapter 11, verse 12. On the morrow, Monday morning, when they were come from Bethany, he was hungry. Now Matthew includes the detail that it was still in the morning. And he just left Bethany. I joked about this when we met Mary and Martha, and poor Martha always gets the bad rap because she's careful and troubled about many things, and that she should have been doing something different, and it's really a fascinating story. But then I talked about the absolute need for Marthas in life, and times in life that each of us need to be Martha. Times we need to lean in our Mary direction, and times we need to lean in our Martha direction as we prove those contraries. Well, I joked then, and I'll repeat it here. Where was Martha this morning when breakfast time rolled around? Because if it's still morning, thank you, Matthew, and Jesus has just left Bethany, thank you, Mark, how could he possibly be hungry already? And I just laughed thinking, imagine if Martha was just sitting there, not in the kitchen, but in other living quarters, just kind of open air, just, oh, breakfast? Oh, forget that. I'm just here to learn a sermon, just like Mary did last time you came into town. No, Marthas are needed. But for whatever reason, Jesus is hungry. He comes in and he sees a fig tree afar off having leaves. Now it's the leaves that drew his attention. Because if there's leaves, then, oh, maybe there's fruit, because those kind of grow together. So Jesus came, if haply he might find anything thereon. And by happily, he just means perhaps, maybe. I mean, it's a long shot, but wouldn't that be nice? Maybe he did have breakfast and he's just trying to fill his pockets for lunch. I don't know. But just in case, maybe, let's go check out that fig tree and see what's on it. Now, when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for the time of figs was not yet. And that last line is important to help us know that, I mean, in some ways, the fig tree hadn't done anything wrong. There weren't supposed to be any figs on it. It was not fig season yet. This is early spring if it's Passover time. So it would be early in the season for any fruit to have already appeared. Okay, so fine. There wasn't supposed to be figs. Maybe that's why that happily, Jesus comes like, what, really? Could it be possible? Maybe some kind of early season fruit that came? But why that particular fig? Why get his hopes up when he would have known also that the time of figs was not yet? Well, it's those leaves. There was such an abundance of foliage that if there's high probability, or at least a distinct possibility, that there's some fruit too. And yet there wasn't. It had an outer show of dramatic growth, but nothing beneath the leaves to back it up. Now, if that's not a visual aid for hypocrisy, I don't know what is. It's such a brilliant, I mean, Isaiah talks about this in chapter 7, as he compares Israel to a tree, to a vineyard or an olive yard, in this case, a fig plantation. And is it fruitful or is it barren? This one may not be barren, but it just doesn't have fruit yet. But it sure wants people to think it does. Come look at my leaves, and please don't look beyond them. Let's stick with skin deep. Now Mark continues, chapter 11, verse 14. Jesus answered and said unto it, now it's speaking directly to the tree, no man eat fruit of thee hereafter forever. And the disciples heard it. They were probably shocked, like, wait, what? This seems so out of character for Jesus. He brings life. Think about what he did for Lazarus. And now he's taking away life from this poor defenseless tree? Well, is he taking away life, or just taking away the outward signs of life that are being used to mask the inner absence? Remember, mask is that Greek word for hypocrite. A hypocrite is an actor who wears a mask. And what's the real person behind the facade? What Jesus is doing here in some ways is just turning it inside out and showing the inside on the outside. And if the inside is barren, then let's make the outside a little more obviously barren too. And so the fig tree is cursed. In the Mathew version, let no fruit grow on thee henceforward forever. So there's no recovery from this one. And presently the fig tree withered away. And when the disciples saw it, they marveled, saying, how soon is the fig tree withered away? Like, that's shocking. Oh, those leaves just shriveled right up. Well, again, if this fig tree, how many passers-by is it going to trick? And if it's going to keep on proclaiming its fruitfulness when it has nothing to back it up, sound like the boy who cried wolf? The tree who cried fig? Pretty soon they're going to stop believing. Pretty soon they're not going to expect anything. And if they stop expecting it, at least there's no hypocrisy there. Because this fig tree has nothing to offer, nothing to give. So let's wither it right from the start. And what's interesting about this, about hypocrisy, is that it's amazing how quickly it does cause us to shrivel up and die. How fast we wither, because we're not tapped in to what would really give us life and fruitfulness. We'll see that concept repeated a moment from now. But one last detail in the Mathew version, 21, verse 21. Jesus answered and said unto them, verily I say unto you, if ye have faith and doubt not, ye shall not only do this which is done to the fig tree, but also if ye shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, it shall be done. And all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive. So it's not just a visual aid on the dangers of hypocrisy. It's also a visual aid on the power of faith. And then Mark continues. Verse 19. When even was come, so this could have been a long day in the temple. I mean, it's clean. There's plenty of people that need to be taught, plenty of people that need to be healed. So come, you can keep being astonished at my doctrine. But now even has come. The day is far spent. And so Jesus went out of the city. And in the morning, so it's now Tuesday of Holy Week, time to come back and pick up where he left off. But as they passed by, they saw the fig tree dried up from the roots. And Peter, calling to remembrance, saith unto him, Master, behold the fig tree which thou cursest, it's withered away. Now in the Mathew version, that all seemed to happen immediately. Presently, I think, was the word that was used. And in Matthew's version, he cleanses the temple first and then curses the fig tree second. But in Mark's version, the chronology is reversed, and it was curse the fig tree first and then cleanse the temple. But then the next day is when they come back and it's like, wow, I thought it looked bad yesterday. It's destroyed by today. Yeah, it's amazing how quickly it can come. This fatal fall because of its own hypocrisy. But I do love the detail that we see here in Mark, that it was dried up from the roots. Because hypocrisy is a root problem. It's down deep. It's in the heart. And if it's dried up from the roots, then there's no way that it's accessing the water that's supposed to nourish it. You see how hypocrisy gets in the way of our access to the living water of Jesus Christ? We don't think we need it. I'm good. Tapping into those reservoirs would suggest that I don't have enough on my own. And no, I'm self-sufficient. Look at me. Come and see how amazing I am. Come and count my leaves. In fact, get so caught up in them that you'll forget that you've been coming for fruit. To dry up from the roots is something we have to be careful about. And then here we see the Mark version of what Matthew said about faith. And Mark's version is a little more full, so I wanted to talk about it here instead of there. Jesus answering saith unto them, Have faith in God. For verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he saith. Matthew's account does talk about faith to move mountains. It does mention that we have to believe. But I love the way Mark describes it. Still faith to move mountains, but do not doubt in your heart. That's, again, the deep roots. And if your roots are tapped into doubt instead of into faith, then no wonder hypocrisy will result. But then flip it around. How does faith overcome hypocrisy? I think, at least the way I think of it, if I have enough faith in Christ, enough to move mountains, enough to pull out sycamore trees, remember that? That was faith to forgive. Well, in this case, faith to overcome hypocrisy. If I have faith in Christ, then I'm willing to admit that I need him. If I have faith in Christ, I'm willing to let people see that not only do I have no fruit, I don't even have many good leaves. I'm willing to let the Lord know about that and turn to him so that he can change me. Through my faith, I can trust in better days ahead instead of faking that those days have already come. No, my faith allows me to know that Jesus, it reassures me that Jesus will accept me as I am and then help me grow up in God to become better. That this gardener will coax real fruit out of me. I don't just have to hide behind my leaves. Mark then closes this scene with some teachings we'll recognize from the Sermon on the Mount. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. And when ye stand praying, forgive if ye have aught against any, that your Father also which is in heaven may forgive you your trespasses. But if you do not forgive, neither will your Father which is in heaven forgive your trespasses. There's a good reminder of the Lord's Prayer. Prayer needs to be drenched in desire. It needs to be bathed in belief. It needs to be selfless instead of self-serving. And if you pray in that way, oh, there's a fruitful fig tree. There's a temple that is not in need of cleansing. There's a disciple whose will can be trusted because they're just trying to do the will of God.